Welcome to Reflections Uncovered. We're titling this one a live storytelling event. So this is a special webinar, the third one we've done, but this time we have some special guests to bring in. So people that have been down, we call it down the Hydra slide. So they have been through the process themselves and they can talk about. We're going to get to them soon, but to start with, we are going to do some intros. So Suze, how are we introing you these days? What hat are you going to wear in tonight's interview?
So I'm Suzanne McFadden and I am a journalist. I've been a journalist for 4 decades, most of that covering sport, especially women's sport in recent years. That's how I know Steve from our journalistic sporting backgrounds. I am now a freelancer, but one of the highlights of my career is getting to work on this Reflections project and tell people's stories, which is, my favorite thing to do. How about you, Steve?
Lovely, Suze. So I'm Steve. I am a co-host on the Between Two Beers podcast. I was also a sports journalist for 12 years at the New Zealand Herald. I worked my way up to premium sports editor before leaving it to go full-time on the podcast and these other businesses like Reflections, which is, really thriving and flourishing and really cool to be part of. Before we sort of get into it, this is interactive tonight. So there's a chat. I would love you to write in the chat sort of where you're joining in from or any questions throughout the 30 minutes, anything you would like to know. That we'll have a Q&A section towards the end after we spoke to Lyndal and Pete, our guests. But yeah, please use the chat. We want it to be as interactive as possible. We're always going to keep an eye on what is coming through there. So quick background on Reflections. This business it's actually kind of, the seed was planted about 5 years ago. So I had my dad on the podcast in year 1. And I remembered after he left, it was in my garage in Glenview, thinking that will one day be my most valuable possession, because it was a 90-minute chat. I was asked them all the questions that I'd always wanted to know, but never found the right time or place. And it planted the seed for this Reflections business. So then I linked up with my co-founder, Kaylee. He got me to interview his parents. We drove out to Pukekohe, me and Seamus, and it worked. It was like treasuring people's stories, capturing them for generations to come. Seamus and I spent the next 12 months going up and down the country, doing private recordings. And then we got to this bottleneck. The demand outweighed what we could do. We needed to get outside help. That's when we brought in Suze. She is the best in this space. She is just incredible in long form interviews. So she's our lead interviewer. We brought on Mark Stafford, and the snowball is just continuing to grow. So it's a really cool part of the journey. We sort of really launched the business about 3 months ago. There's been a lot of interest, but one request keeps cropping up from those curious. It would be great to hear from a family that's actually had a Reflections interview. It's very well me and Suze saying how great it is, but they would love to hear from someone that's actually been through it. And tonight we are going to do that, but better than having one, we've got 2. So we're going to talk with Pete Marshall and Lyndal Miller. So Pete was in front of camera, behind the mic. So me and Seamus captured his story, and Suze captured Lyndal's dad, Stewart, in Christchurch. So first of all, I'm going to bring in Pete. I'm going to have a bit of a chat with him, and then Suze is going to bring in Lyndal. So Pete Marshall, come on down.
G'day, Steve. How you doing, mate? Good one.
Yeah, good. So Pete received a Reflections interview from his family for his 70th birthday. So I kind of want to start at the beginning. Can you tell us the journey, Pete, about how you first heard about Reflections, how it was presented to you, the early days of actually understanding what this was?
Well, Steve, as I've said to you and Seamus, is that I've met people in New Zealand that I didn't even know existed through obviously your podcast, and heard about it. My youngest daughter gave me a gift a few years ago where I had to write. I had to type things out. It was like a book thing she wanted me to do. Well, I'm a sort of dyslexic agnostic. I will lie awake wondering if there's a dog. So that was never going to work. So I took a crew of mates over to Rarotonga, and I asked my youngest daughter I asked both of them to come, but one was an Aussie, and she came over, and she gave me a gift in Raro. And I'd sent them a lot of links to some of your podcasts because they really affected me. And she gave me this gift, which was a laminated product of your product. And quite honestly, I was burst into tears. It was one of the most emotional things I sort of had happen to me in a long, long time. And I went, wow. And then I started the process myself, which was back in early June. And I really had to then start looking at my lifeline, you know, in my own way. And that was a journey I didn't even know I was going to start.
Yeah, once you knew that you were going to be interviewed and you understood what it was, how did you prep for it? Did it make you think about your life and what you were going to say?
I researched and spoke to people that are still alive that I could talk to bring into context what I've sort of had this fluff in the background of my world, which obviously I knew about. But yeah, I just put things into context and you know, basically learnt more about what I've never really regarded I should look at back again, because it's my history. But it becomes a bit of a fuzzy world in your own way, and sometimes you don't get it all right.
Pete, reflect on your reflections. Tell me about the experience, what you got out of it, how you felt when you left the studio.
Well, guys, I start at the beginning, really. I mean, you know, my daughter set you up obviously by prepping up the studio to a sort of a play format, which goes back to one of the businesses, which was cracked me up, you know. And you called it loosely when it was all decked out in camo and stuff, and you called it the war room. I said, no, it was never the war room. It was the knitting room, you know, because you don't tell everyone you're having a war room because they know what you're doing. So you have a knitting room. And basically what blew me away with you guys was the depth of research. I had no idea behind the scenes how much you guys had done behind. And that I found incredible. To speak people you've spoken to, obviously you've been fed names and people, that's fine. But the depth of what you came out with, I was actually quite gobsmacked, to be honest with
you. And Pete, what happened after the cameras stopped? Like, how did it change the way that you communicated with your daughters or your family, or did it open up other conversations that sort of had been locked away?
Well, once the product came out, absolutely, you know, for conversations with a lot of people, and it certainly up the ante with my communication with a lot of my mates who had contributed to it, and obviously communicated with them, and you know, thanked them dearly for some of the comments they made about the process and about me, which I thought was very, very kind. It certainly opened up, and it just cements what we sometimes forget, you know, that people are the only things we have in this world. If we don't actually continue with them, what are we doing?
One of the parts of the reflections process is we ask friends and family to send through ways that the guest has influenced or impacted their life, and we read them out in the recording. And we did that with you, Pete, on the home straight. I think we had a few tequilas as we read out some of the ways that you had touched people's lives. How did that make you feel? How would you describe that part of the experience?
Well, I've obviously gone back to those people since then, you know, and spoken to them about it. And it was an interesting thing. People, you know, Kiwis especially, they just don't tell people how they feel about the others. They don't talk enough about it. It's sort of like it's a hidden secret. I'll wait till you're dead, then I'll tell people about you in your eulogy. Well, this is like sort of I was at my own eulogy, you know, but I was there still, and that was the big part.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to wrap you up, Pete, I'm going to bring you back in for the Q&A afterwards. But what would you say to anyone who's considering either wanting to tell their story or son or daughter wanting to get their parents' story captured? You have any messages?
Just simple. Just don't wait. You know, don't wait. There's so we've got technical ability now to do this. We didn't in the years gone by of my uncles and grandfathers and mothers and my father and so on. That just wasn't available as a process. It was a written thing, it was a letter or whatever it was. Didn't even have emails, for God's sake, I'm that old. But the thing is now, don't wait. I mean, you can't not carry the story on and carry this digital lodge of history, of time, of people you adore and love, and bring them in. You have to do this. I mean, it's not saying what it is about me, the person who was on the hot seat of this process. It's about everyone, and it's a start. To me, it's not a finish. This is the beginning.
I love it, Pete. Hang around. Yeah, if you've got questions for Pete about anything, flick them through the chat. We're going to bring him back in afterwards. But I'm going to hand over to the lovely Suze to intro Lyndal and pick up the chat with her.
Thanks, Steve. Kia ora, Lyndal.
Hi, Suze. How are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Thank
Lovely
you
to
so
see you again.
much. Lovely to see you too. Thank you so much for being part of this webinar tonight. First of all, I want to know, how did you first hear about Reflections, and what made you think that your dad was perfect for it?
Yeah, I guess it's not unlike Pete. I've been following the Between Two Beers podcast, and so was across it when it was released, or the idea was muted out in public. And for me, I really wanted to understand Dad. He's had an incredible life. I think he was 89, 90 at the time. He might have been 90, 89. And yeah, so there's a lot that's gone on in those years, and he's one of those behind the scenes kind of person, people, and really good about talking about his achievements, but not so good about sharing those stories that are really personal and what makes him who he is.
And I mean, what a wonderful gentleman your dad was. And he was my first Reflections interview, and I just fell in love with him straight away as soon as I sat down.
No, I think
Well, what was his reaction when you told him that you were, gifting him, I guess, this opportunity?
Yeah, Dad's a really humble man, and so like a lot of gentlemen of his era, he probably didn't think he had a story worth telling, and so he hummed and hawed about it. And I don't have much to say. Interesting enough, we'd done a similar thing to what Pete had done with my mum before she passed, but she wanted to write her own story. And I remember saying to Dad after Mum passed, I said, let's do that for you. And so I kept egging him on, come on, can you give me something? And after a bit of prompting, he said to me one day, he said, look, I've done what you've asked, and I've come up with my life story. And I said, that's fantastic. And he passed me 1.5 typed pages. And I just looked at him and I was like, you're nearly 90 years old and it comes down to 1.5 pages. And what it was like a CV, and Dad's a really impressive man. And it was a great CV, and it talked about his refereeing, and it talked about his community work and his council work and his QSM and all these things. But none of it gave me an opportunity to understand the man behind that.
Was he nervous about it before I showed up and the cameras showed?
He wasn't particularly nervous. Dad just took it in his stride. I think once he's committed to something, that was it, and he realised how much it meant to me.
Yeah. And I think at first some of his answers were quite short, but I got better and better at teasing stuff out of him. Were there things that he said that you had never heard him say before?
Oh, yeah. And I think that's the whole benefit for when you come in, Suze. You're a really experienced and expert journalist, and you ask questions in a way that maybe I haven't. And I think he opened up. I think you knew when to ask that right question, and you gave him space just to sit with that, and then you'd follow up at that right time. And that's when those stories came out that I'd never heard before. I think you opened up doors that we could never have done on our own.
Yeah, and I think that that is often the case when you, as a family member, are asking, and your parent may be reluctant to answer that to you, but when it's a different person sitting there, and I don't know any of his story other than, the wonderful things that you filled me in on before. So then he kind of opened up, and it was awesome. Your dad passed away earlier this year, and you had got a highlights reel made alongside the video. And tell me about how useful that was.
Yeah. So Dad unfortunately passed about 6 months after the interview, and that highlights reel stepped into its own when we were planning the funeral. It was a large funeral, and to be able to have Dad speak at his funeral, so we played the entire highlights reel at his funeral, and it was actually as if he was speaking to us in the room. It was, again, like what Pete said, he delivered his own eulogy, and it was really incredible. And I lost count of how many people during or after the service came up to me and said, "Oh, I wish I'd done that to my parents," or I wish I had done this." And yeah, I mean, it was just heartwarming. It made the day for me.
That was very special for us to feel like we were there as well. Tell me what other people in the family have said about watching the full video.
Yeah. So as I say, I think we all always known about Dad's achievements, but some of those finer things, his upbringing. I never knew my grandparents, so for me, it was really cool to hear him speak about them. And the same, my son, he's hearing things that he'd never heard before, and as he said, he'll be able to play it for his children down the track. So, and then from other grandchildren, it's like they get a sense of where they've come from. My dad was a stoic, no nonsense farmer. Didn't often talk about his feelings until the latter years, and he really evolved in that last 10 years. And what we got then was somebody who was really vulnerable and open to discussion. But I think I saw that more than anyone else. So for the grandchildren and my siblings to see it as well, it was, they were quite blown away by how open and vulnerable he was.
Yeah. Well, Stewart set a very high benchmark for us with that, that very first wonderful video. And can I also just take this opportunity to thank you, Lyndal, because you have been an amazing supporter of Reflections ever since, and we really, really appreciate that.
Thank you, and you're very welcome. And I'm not here to sell the service or the product, but I just can't recommend it highly enough. And like Pete said, don't wait, because one day if we hadn't done it when we did it, we would have missed it, and our lives would be the poorer for it. So don't wait.
Amazing. Steve, I'll hand it back to you. Thanks, Lyndal.
Yeah, thanks, Lyndal, and thanks, Suze. We've got a very special offer, which I'm going to announce shortly, but we've got a little bit of Q&A before we get to it. The first question through is, would Mum and Dad be interviewed together or individually? The answer to that is either. We've done both. So we have had a mum and dad, and we've captured their stories individually, and we've also had them both in the same conversation. So I did one with very successful business owners. This was a few months ago, and it's a really cool experience bringing them both in together. So I would start, the first sort of 10 or 15 minutes with his story, and then the next 10 or 15 minutes with her story. And then I would bring them together in the starting of when they met and how they built the business together. And when you get the friends and family all feeding in, get them to tell about this story or that adventure or this, and they're laughing and sharing sort of anecdotes from 20, 30, 40 years. It's a really special space. Equally, everyone's life is worth telling on its own. So standalone 2 hours of a full life story is a really cool option. I want to ask Pete, question from Sharon. How hard was it to actually recall all the key elements of your life?
Yeah, good question, Sharon. And the reality was that having the time prior to that, when my daughter gave me this gift, was the key factor. I was able to really line up my life and correlate it into a line that I could sort of work on. I've always had a bit of an ability of remembering stuff, so wasn't too bad. But also, I really researched hard about really history behind that as well. So it was actually a bigger experience for me for the 4 weeks prior to this, the Reflections interview, than the interview itself. And post that, it just carries on, which is fantastic.
Pete, can I just ask, furthering that, would you recommend that, if you are the interview subject, that you do a bit of homework beforehand?
Absolutely. If you get the chance, absolutely. That was actually, that to me, as I said on the day, actually, that was actually one of the major factors for me, because it's very easy to keep stumbling through your day and your life and your world, and you often don't stop and take note and go back and talk to people and say, listen, what actually did happen then? I remember it vaguely, so and I did a bit of that, and it also, as I said just before, it's been a fantastic opportunity to just rekindle, reconnect, and hey, what's the word about the whole thing? Reflect on what it all is about.
Right, question for Lyndal. How have you used the video story since it was completed?
So for me, obviously, we used the highlights reel at my father's funeral. I've shared the full length one with immediate family, but I actually sat down on Sunday night and watched it on Father's Day. I watched the full length one. I had the tissues. There were plenty of tears, but gosh, it was special. It was as if, again, that Dad was in the room, and you get those times where I get quite overwhelmed with missing my dad, and just to have that for me personally was just a real bonus.
Lyndal, can I also ask you what conversations the experience sparked up with you and Dad afterwards? Did it bring out more memories afterwards?
Yeah, and again, so often you do hear the stories at a funeral, and you wish you'd known more. Well, I got to hear the stories that he talked to you about, but it gave me that opportunity later to say, hey, remember when you're talking to Suzanne about that? I want to know a little bit more about that. So tell me what really happened, and we got a lot more detail. So yeah, that gave me real peace at the end, knowing that I knew my father in depth, and a lot of those conversations had come from what you'd started.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you so much, guys. I did promise the listeners that we would keep this to 30 minutes, and I want to give time for the very special offer that we are about to announce. But thank you so much for coming and sharing your experiences and being part of the Reflections family. Lyndal, thank you for being our biggest cheerleader. Pete, I've really enjoyed our connection since, and look forward to many more conversations in the future. But yeah, thank you so much for coming and sharing your experiences tonight. Well, no, wait, I got one last question for you, Pete. Sorry, how easy was it for you to share your feelings? This is a good question.
As a shy guy as I am, I guess getting underneath that sometimes the bullshit and bravado is a bit hard, but for me, sometimes you really have to. And when you ask the direct questions you do ask about, your siblings, how it's going, where they fit in your world, and so on and so forth, it challenges you to actually really understand what you're talking about. And the post conversations with them both have just been fantastic.
Yeah, cheers, Pete. Right, time to present the special offer. I think our man in the background is going to put it on the screen, but we are going to give away a highlights reel, which is valued at $1,000. If you pay and book a Reflection film interview before 5 p.m. September 19th. So as Lyndal was talking about, the highlight reel can be used for many different purposes. It can be used for a funeral. It can be used as a sort of a business case study. It can be claimed as a business expense if it's a business story. It can be used as marketing to get people to watch it. If it's got a particular story about a sporting achievement, we can focus on that. It's bespoke. So we contact you after the recording and we ask, what you would like that reel to be used for, and it can just be incredibly powerful. There's so many different uses for it on social media depending on how you want to use it. So yeah, it's valued at $1,000, but we are giving it away if you book and pay for a reflection film interview before 5 p.m. on Friday, September the 19th. How does that sales pitch sound, Suze? Do you reckon I've sold it?
I think you have. I'm quite keen to book one myself. That means getting a free highlights reel.
Yeah, it's the coolest thing, reflections. Like Suze and I often talk about it being our most fulfilling work and the best use of our skill set, and the whole team is storytelling. The power of storytelling and capture people's stories before it's too late is just everything. So thank you for joining us. The next step on screen is the very lovely Kerry Quinn. Book a no obligation 15-minute call with Kerry. She can run you through the whole process and everything you need to know. You can also go to reflections.life, where there is a 10-minute explainer vid with me and Suze walking you through all the processes of how it works. There's testimonials. You'll find Lyndal up there talking about her story. All the information you need to know at reflections.life. But book a call with Kerry, get it done within the next week or so, and you get the free highlights reel. Thanks for everyone who has tuned in tonight, and yeah, we'll see you at the next one. Thank you, Lyndal. Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you for everyone on the line.
Ka kite anō.